Good morning. Welcome to Office Hours, the show where we answer your technical media production questions every single week. Dave, what's our first question?
Well, the first question comes from me because we had a very interesting discussion with Chris this morning. I'm wondering, what code inspiration did Chris Sabato have this morning?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Chris.
Sorry, I'm jumping the gun. I'm excited. So I was. We have a Dante comms infrastructure, and part of our campus is across the couple streets, and it's connected via wireless bridge. And Dante does not like wireless bridges, and so I can't get my Dante audio over there. And so I've been kind of thinking about ways I can extend our comms infrastructure to our play-by-play for baseball out there at that facility. And one of the things I've been thinking about is NDI, because NDI will traverse those bridges just fine. And so can I convert that Dante traffic into NDI traffic? And I messed around with Llama Connect a little bit, and it didn't really, it was harder than I thought it was going to be. And so I know NDI has this tool called NDI Free Audio. And what it does is it converts a local device into an NDI stream and vice versa. So it will take your, whatever, your Scarlett that you have plugged into your computer and convert that into an NDI feed, and vice versa, take an NDI feed and convert that into your output into your Scarlett. And so it's like, okay, well, I can do this. I have an XR18 on the other side, and I can use DVS. And so I can convert the Dante traffic via DVS into NDI free audio, and on the other side, convert it to the XR18. And so this morning, I was chatting with Claude. I may or may not have been in the shower while I was doing this, but I was chatting with Claude about how I could streamline this, and it gave me the framework for an application that will basically be a GUI for that NDI free audio command line tool. And it basically gave me a Claude MD file that I gave to Claude Code, and I said, here you go and do this. And it generated a file. I published it to GitHub. It's set so that when it publishes to GitHub, it compiles the exe, and I can just download it and install it. It doesn't work quite yet. Literally, I'm 45 minutes into the process of this. But it's starting to come together, and I'm squashing some bugs. And it's one of those things where this is stuff that I may have done in the past, but it would have been a much longer process. It would have been thinking about it, maybe waiting until I've got some free time, not the morning where I have 4 home broadcast events. Like, this is with the advent of Claude Code and AI, I'm able to take that idea and just throw it at the wall and get something back, and it's amazing.
Very cool. Let's go to Ronnie.
Yeah, it's so inspirational to listen to Chris and all these cool stuff that you are doing all the time. And I think what we will see in AI and using these tools that are now available from everybody on the planet that has a computer of some form, we will see a lot of things being done exactly that way that Chris describes. You get an ID, you just jump all the previous hoops with wireframing and discovery, and all these phases are kind of just jumped over, and you go directly to not prototyping, you go directly to actually building the application you would like to have working, and just do some iterations on that one, and be really good at describing in the first run what we actually like to have as an MVP. MVP is minimal viable product, for those that are interested in the lingo as well. And building the app is just so nice to see things coming together and just work. And I have to say that the last 6 months has been kind of an up and down thing, and very often, more often than not, we have a kind of a cheer in the office where we just saw that something advanced is really popping into place and start working, and that is so energizing. And being able to just do that instead of all those old processes where you basically work for weeks or days or even months to see a new function is really, really cool. And the only thing I'm really scared about is all these new coders or developers that are starting to use these tools. They don't have the basic understanding of security, and they are putting code out back to GitHub, and AIs are using GitHub as a source for learning how to code. So I'm kind of a little bit thinking about the quality of that code that goes into GitHub, and I hope everyone is actually tagging the code with created with AI. I see Claude especially is adding in cooperation with Claude. It adds to the GitHub repositories when you commit them. So that is a good thing, because then AIs that are using GitHub as a source for learning how to code are aware of that fact that this code it's now reading is made by another AI or even the same AI. And of course, security and the overarching problem that we have with AI, maybe publishing stuff it shouldn't have been publishing, like we saw earlier this week with Claude and the code that was released, I guess, as a mistake. But I think we see a lot of those problems happening in the coming days, months, and years.
And Nigel.
Yeah, I was going to say that actually I did my first coding project this week using Claude. Actually, I was using ClaudeBot as my assistant, and together we added a search bar to my website. And I have to tell you, I'm not as technically sophisticated as Chris, and I have a long time since I've done any coding. But once I was able to get it to just step away down through what I needed, one step at a time, I did some amazing stuff. And I would just encourage anybody, even if you're as technically incompetent as me, but you have the patience, you can do some great stuff.
All right. Just a reminder, if you want to participate in this show, we've got room for lots of questions here. If you don't know how to post questions on this show, we use a production tool. It's called Mukana. And if you want to find out about how to access that, all you need to do is you have to go to officehours.global/join. Just put in your name and email, and we'll send you all the information you need to do that. You can vote on those questions up and down. It's kind of like Reddit. That helps drive the run of show. And also you can chat with us live. You're missing half the show if you're not doing that. All right, let's jump to the next question.
The next one comes from Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. I'm looking for a wired mouse to use on a Mac. Doesn't need to be a gaming mouse. Budget up to $100 US. Less would be better.
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, so the challenge with wired mice is the good ones are mostly gaming mice, don't necessarily work with a Mac. And by the way, you can spend 1/10 of that and get a pretty good Logitech mouse for about $9, $10. The other thing, of course, even if you go towards something more sophisticated like one of these MX Masters, it does have a USB-C which you can connect not only for charging but also for connectivity. But I guess the question really is, if you just want it because you want a wired mouse, then you don't need to spend more than $10 unless you're doing something fairly sophisticated.
And Courtney.
Yeah, you can still get wired. They're getting harder and harder to find, but cheap wired mice, you can get for around $10. I do like the Logitechs, like the 500S. It's not necessarily a gaming mouse. They're $30 at your Office Depot, and you could probably find them cheaper at some cheaper place. They also make a gaming version. This one has a couple of nice features about these, is that they do have the scroll wheel has a click on it. So if you like the clicky scroll wheel or the smooth scroll wheel, you have your choice by clicking, by pressing on the scroll wheel. It can do either detented scrolling or non-detented scrolling. It also has a resolution switch button there, so you can change the number of dots per inch or the resolution of the mouse, I think it goes up to 4,000 per inch, divisions per inch. And it has a couple of buttons on the side that are programmable for page forward, page back, or whatever you want to program them for. They also make the gaming version of this for about $50. But, it has that RGB lighting just to distract you under your hand. If you have an eyeball in your hand, then you'll be amazed by that RGB lighting in the mouse. And it has more programmable buttons, and it's a lot faster and has a little higher resolution, and it's more ergonomically shaped. But you can get by with, easily half of that price for a good wired gaming mouse, or, about a third of that, $100 for just a good wired multifunction mouse.
And Chris.
Yeah, I would wonder why you have a requirement for a wired mouse. I would agree with Courtney. I like the Logitech stuff, but for me, it's wireless, and I can't think of a reason why I would ever choose to have a wire on my mouse. It's just they're especially with the Logitech mice, it's just so easy to not have it, and the batteries last for years. So that would be my probative question: is what is drawing you to say you need a wired mouse? If for me, I would look at the Logitech wireless. Even the cheapest, even the $30 ones are fantastic, and the batteries last for months and months and months.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I have found a reason not to use a wireless mouse, and that if you're in an RF hostile environment that has a lot of if there's a microwave nearby, I used to have problems with my wireless mice, and because I had a wireless keyboard and a wireless mic and a wireless everything else that's in 2.4 gigahertz, it's all going over that 2.4 gigahertz, and it's not a high data rate on a mouse, but once those signals get scrambled or it gets lossy, then you'll find your mouse skipping a little bit or jumping and or moving around like this when you're not touching the mouse. So I just went back to a wired mouse, and I haven't looked back at all.
Yeah, actually, I prefer wired mice too. But Chris, what else?
You guys are crazy. So yes, I have had some instances where the RF has been, and really where I found it, and it was in the early days of USB 3. Is if you plug the USB 3 device in, the Logitech mice, the range shot down quickly. And usually what I do, like my transmitter is usually on an extension cable, and really is never more than about yay far from my mice, and that's worked for me. So, but your mileage may vary. Enjoy your wires.
Well, for me, my perspective is that I don't ever want to have to think about a battery. So I get that it's more convenient, but even for me, I just find like I've been shopping for a new mechanical keyboard, and there seems to be this trend with mechanical keyboards now where every single keyboard has a big battery in it and a Bluetooth module and a Wi-Fi module, and they also have the option for the cable. But I don't want all that extra stuff because it adds, $100 plus cost now. Keyboards have become a fad now. So, now you find these $200, $250, $300 mechanical keyboards, and they have stuff in there that you don't necessarily want. So I think that's a valid reason to not want to go with wireless. And also, Craig Kadoki in the chat mentions about KVMs. There are some compatibility issues. And in fact, I have a KVM switch here, and I have actually seen issues with KVMs with USB Wi-Fi dongles, where things like I actually had a Kensington trackball mouse once that I tried to hook up to a KVM, and it wouldn't even recognize it. Like the software wouldn't see the mouse that was connected to the computer at all. So there may be some edge cases because not everyone has a KVM switch, but that's certainly something to think about. And I was going to say, it's a good thing that Apple doesn't make wired mice anymore, because remember that Puck mouse? That was probably one of the worst mice that they ever manufactured. So I too will support Logitech. If you go to their website, and you can actually go to the filter on the top of the page there and just filter out by wired if that's the type of mouse you want, and you'll see all the available options there. This is probably, I'm guessing, in US dollars, but they got stuff well under $100 with lots of extra buttons on the sides that you can customize, as you can make those macros and stuff like that. So there certainly are lots of options. All right, Dave, what's up on the next question?
Well, the next one is from Harold Williams in Portsmouth. He says he successfully turned his Minisforum MS-01 into an AWS MediaLive Anywhere node running on RHEL 9.5 with an i9 13900H, whatever that is, under the hood. It's a tiny beast, now starting at a 24-hour stress test, and remote broadcast control, here we come. And thanks to OH.
Go ahead, Chris.
Awesome. It's awesome. I want one of those Minisforums in my IT department. Says it's not a Dell, you can't have it. So hopefully I can convince them that those are awesome little devices, and they're so powerful, and they're small, and I can see a million uses for it. So good luck with that.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was just taking a look at it. It's a connection beast, because if you look at the back of this little PC, it's got two 2.5 gig LANs and two SFP ports on it, so you can get optical directly into it. It's got two USB 4 ports and HDMI, and I think these are capable of also powering displays. And it runs off DC, 19 volts, just like your laptop. And I think it'll take you could probably put an external video card in there as well, with quite a handsome processor, an i9 running in there. It should be a beast. I don't know how much you paid for it, how much RAM you have it loaded up with, but it should be quite a beast.
And Ronnie.
Yeah, that is a good segue into my additional question. How has the pricing for these beasts been in the States last months, primarily based on the changes in import taxes and the memory pricing? Anyone knows?
Well, here at Minisforum, the list price is $623 for, I don't know what the memory configuration is here, but that's
I think
for the
that's bare bones with nothing.
Yeah, that's the Core i9. Yeah, that is bare bone version. They only sell it as a bare bone version in the United States, apparently. But, oh, sorry, there's a coupon. Okay, $30 off. But anyway, so you would have to populate it with RAM, and that's going to be your most expensive part these days, and of course SSD.
Next question.
Next one comes from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Do you agree we're seeing a clear shift toward open software-based infrastructure?
Nigel.
I had a quick check, and I think the first computer that didn't require hot wires to plug it to program, it was called the Manchester Baby in 1948. And from that day forward, we've increasingly added software layers to everything we do to extract us from the physical hardware. What the report in TV technology is talking about is this has now hit the television production world. And there is no doubt that there will be an increasing use of cloud and software-based switching and technology on top of a minimalized hardware function. There'll always be a role for hardware functions. There'll always be a way for something physical, but I think we can all accept that software extraction is the way we live the future.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's go to the next question.
Next up is Douglas Carmichael. He's asking, what features make DiGiCo consoles so popular for major tours and festivals versus other brands?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, it's difficult to just point out a few things, but they were really early on with the FPGAs, so that you reconfigure the console to whatever you needed to do. They also was very early allowing sound guys to build their shows on smaller versions of the same console, and then just bring the show file with them and then import that into the bigger consoles or whatever console of the DiGiCo series that was available based on the riders. And of course, they have a lot of functionality that goes directly to how sound engineers are working with shows, waves integration, and using fiber for communication to and from the stage, etc. And of course, the capacity and the level of professionalism. I think it's one of the best features that DiGiCo is providing. If you have a problem, you can have a hot number to call, and you get a support engineer on the phone right away, and that is a thing that is really worth it when you are doing shows around the world, or even in smaller places where you have your console fail, because every console fails. It's the after support and while you're doing the show support that is really important for most of these high quality and big quality shows. And of course it is almost everywhere, and a lot of people started to learn that. And if you have a lot of people learning, it is it's like a plus every time you go to a new concert venue. You probably have a few people already knowing that console in and out, and the number of consoles sold are a good thing to look at. The numbers are staggering.
Courtney.
Yeah, and when you're paying $250,000 for a console, because I just checked the prices here, the Quantum 7 digital is $311,000, and this one is $239,000, depending upon that's the new low price. So you have to have pretty deep pockets to do these. So you're going to expect a good level of service out of that company, and they're going to, if you're paying that much for a console, you're going to get really good aftermarket service for that. So that's why a lot of people are going with it.
Yeah, everything that was said, and I will support that too. The FPGA processing on those consoles is absolutely ridiculous. They have I haven't actually kept up with the newer 825 or whatever that new series is, but like for example, like on the SD7, they have both an A and a B processor module. So if in some catastrophe, if for some reason the computer A goes down, then computer B can just take over. You can go to a backup. So like those are pro level features that you pay for. And like Courtney was saying, when you're paying that much money, you would expect certain type of reliability and redundancy as well. That's another thing. And the key is support. They sound fantastic. Also, I mean, the bus processing and the routing capability and the sound and the tools that are provided on those consoles are absolutely incredible. I've actually never had the privilege to work on one, but I also too I agree, like if you want to be someone that is called in to do shows, because that console is so ubiquitous, that's definitely, that should be at the top of your list of consoles to actually learn how to work on. Because like Ronnie said, you go into a venue, something happens, let's say, front of house guy calls in sick or something happens, and they call you. If you know how to work on that console, that's really going to help your career. Let's go to the next question.
Next up is Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. With a managed switch, can you set a particular port to a VPN?
Ronnie.
Depending on the equipment you have at hand, yes. And depending on the equipment you have at hand, no. So what I would do is to just have that port become a member of a VLAN, and in the router set that VLAN to be the one that are going out on that specific VPN. So this is easily done in some platforms, like Ubiquiti can do this pretty easily, and there are other platforms as well that can do this. But it's really depending on what features and options you have in your equipment, and of course, to some extent, competence to be able to set it up. And in that regard, you can use AI to help you configure almost any switch that are existing on the planet currently. So AI has a good grasp on most of the configuration settings that most of these platforms will provide.
Next question.
Next up is from a guy named Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, BC. If your ATEM Mini Extreme ISO switcher stopped functioning tomorrow, what would you replace it with if you needed ISO recording but don't rely on it as a switcher for functionality?
Dave, what do you think?
Well, I'd switch to eCam myself. I would. You can record off eCam. It does ISO, and it would do all your switching for you. So that's a recommendation I'd make.
Nigel?
Yeah, I think the interesting question is, as we move to advanced media and get 4K for Zoom, what are we all going to do who has ATEMs connected? Because our ATEMs are going to kick out 1080. I think if I had to physically replace my ATEM switcher, I would probably replace it with a physical device. I'd probably look at the Rhodes. I think I'm using the Rode Caster Pro 2, and I really like that. And I think I'd like to try a bit more Rode. I think if I really had to put out 4K, then I'm going to have to find OBS or eCam or something like that to do it, because the next step up from a physical switcher is I think, way out of the price range.
And Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with Nigel. I'd go with the Rodecaster Video, the bigger one, because it does so much more than and it records ISO. It does so much more than the ATEMs, with the ability to handle NDI and multiple channels of NDI, and it has super source built in without having to go to the extreme, and all the little multi-programmable buttons and the built-in RAM for media playback and for animated logos, animated lower thirds, things like that. It's so much easier, so much more versatile. And a lot less buttons on the front to try and figure out. So, although the price has gone through the roof, I haven't checked. The Video S is all I'm seeing on B&H. The regular video was $1,200. It's probably up to about $1,500 right now.
And Chris?
So you said you don't need it for switching. So it's a step up.
Well, the thing is, I just want to be clear. I can use a software-based switcher. The problem is I'm still grappling with, I need a way to get all the HDMI cameras into the computer, and I haven't found a good solution without the expensive option of converting everything to SDI, external PCI card, converter boxes, all that stuff. So
then that makes my suggestion even worse. I was going to suggest and someone else had mentioned Key Pros, and I was going to suggest the AJA Key Pro Go, which is an H.264 recorder, and I've had my eye on one for a while, and it just seems so convenient. You just push a button and you just feed SDIs in. It just gives you 4 in sync files. But yeah, Aja really makes some great stuff. I gotta take a look at their product lineup again. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, as you said, you don't need to have a switcher, but you definitely need to be able to have routing. So what I would suggest is you go and get yourself a video hub with the capacity that you need, and just do the calculations. How many sources are you going to have in and out of this software-based switcher, and buy the next one. So don't buy the one that you need, buy the one that is one step up. And for ingesting this into the computer, there are many ways. AJ has one. Blackmagic Decklinks is a very popular thing to do. They have some quirks, just be aware of that, and put that into a Sonnet or some other world computing cabinets, and you will be good to go. But eventually, it's more a question about moving away from hardware-based switchers into software-based workflows. And if you are have your mind set on going all software-based switching, either way, you need something to route your signals before it enters the computer, and when you send things out from the computer, you also need to route it somewhere, and having a video hub for that particular thing is a good idea.
And Courtney?
Yeah, I was just surprised. I just checked B&H on the Rodecaster price. It is in stock at $810, so I think they're getting, these are older stock, but I'm sure they can be updated. The latest version of the firmware update adds a bunch of neat stuff. It now, besides recording ISOs, it will also now create a project file for you so that you can bring those ISOs into Resolve.
Oh, good.
kind of like what the ATEM does.
Because I use that exact feature. And there was a comment in the chat by Justin James saying that Rode forces firmware and app updates, and he can't take it seriously as a production tool. He had an instance where in the middle of a show he couldn't get in, and he had to install. It was forced on him that he had to install the firmware. Have you experienced that, Courtney, with the Rodecaster?
No. Well, if you use the software switcher or the software control, Rode Central, which you don't have to use,
right?
You can use it without that software completely. So if you're not trying to run that software, it's like the ATEM. If you update the ATEM software, a lot of times it'll require, if it's a major update, it'll require a firmware update to the ATEM.
Right.
So sometimes if you start in a show and you suddenly launch the software and there's a newer version, you say, oh, let me use the newer version. Then it's going to force a ROM update, a firmware update on the hardware. So, just bear that in mind. You should never agree to a software update right before you start a show, and you're not, it doesn't force you into it. There's a way to turn on and off automatic software updates. So you have your choice of when to update and when not to.
All right. So I got some research to do here. Let's go to the next question.
The next one's from J.J. McKenna in Scabo, California. During the pre-show, there was a comment that Zoom was never designed as a production tool. How many Emmys should Zoom win to qualify as a production tool?
Okay, JJ. Yeah, he's calling out my comment. So I want to clarify something. I love Zoom. Zoom has production tools. For me, and you can fight me on this, but I don't consider the vanilla Zoom client, the meeting client, I don't consider that a production tool. That is an app that is used to communicate in a meeting with someone. They have production tools with the SDK. They have their own production tools. They have Zoom Rooms. They have Zoom ISO, all these other tools, plus their SDK, which is, that's their software developer kit, which you can integrate production level tools in your own apps as well. You can build stuff off their platform. But just the meeting client, I'm not doing production inside of that, because otherwise I'd be connecting the HDMI out of a computer into a switcher and trying to screen scrape. That's not really production quality. So I just want to clarify that. If anyone wants to add to that, absolutely. Dave, you got a comment about that?
Well, I think the number is 3. It should win for technical excellence, for innovation, and for reliability. It's attempting to cater a little bit to the production tool needs, and with more of an emphasis lately on makers and podcasters and people who are not in the tradition of television production, who are inventing new ways to create content. It's working very fine for them. And I think, newsrooms are now beginning to see that Zoom can be made to be reliable, and so they're starting to use it there. And as a production tool, cameras have been getting better and better and better all the time, but they don't win a lot of Emmys for being better. So,
and JJ says every participant in this Guinness Book qualifying event is using a vanilla client. Yeah, that's true. All right, let's go to the next question.
Sure. This one's from Alexander Knight himself. What is the current state of NDI support on macOS? As far as I'm aware, not all tools are at feature parity. Does anyone in production use it on a Mac, or is this still a Windows-owned world?
Chris, you got some comments about NDI and Windows and Mac?
You're right. There's not feature parity. Obviously, it's because they wanted to develop for the better platform, right? No, it is. You're right. It's not featured.
I knew you were going to say that. By the way, I just feel like I just opened up a can of worms.
Sure, I'm joking, right? Like every tool has its use, and there are a lot of tools from like Sienna has a bunch of Mac-based stuff that kind of expands on some of the ones directly from NDI, and so you're right. There's some gaps, and if you're using Mac, you may hit some of those, and I don't feel bad because I hit a lot of those gaps on the other way around from some Mac software that's not fully available on Windows, and so you just got to find the right tool for the right job.
Yep, that absolutely makes sense. All right, let's go to the next question.
The next one comes from Rajan Shandil in Los Angeles, California. Have you heard of New Studio, the first modular portable studio system designed for immersive audiovisual production?
New Studio. Wow, you've stumped me. I've
Got a
never
link
heard
there
of it.
for
Has
New
anybody,
Studio. Yeah.
Nigel, have you heard of this tool?
I went to the website and I didn't spend a lot of time there, but it occurs to me that sometimes you're at a show, an audio show, a video show, CS, and you need to build a semi-soundproof booth for doing either demonstration of audio equipment or actually mixing stuff. And this looks like a way to do it. And it looks like a sort of a kit with everything you need to create a sort of mixing studio in one box. You can see Courtney's got some video up of it. It's just it's productizing a movable system. Unfortunately, I think it would probably be a little expensive for my basement.
It does look cool, and I don't see. I'm sure they probably don't have pricing announced there, but you know, it does. It looks pretty slick, I have to say. Just looking at it now. Any guesses as to how much that thing is? I mean, the question is, can you buy it and install it yourself, or do you have to, or do they send techs to install this thing? Because it looks,
There's a lot of stuff involved there, yeah.
Yeah, you need someone qualified to install that.
It does say contact us for details. So
there we go. That's
none of us can afford it, yes.
It's not going to be cheap.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next question.
The next one is from Alexander in Port Coquitlam, BC again. With AI vibe coding tools, how are you vetting the code it creates? Are you reviewing things yourself for errors, or are you using another tool to help?
Ronnie.
Yeah, so errors is not the biggest problem. By vetting the code, I think the most important thing is to actually read through the code, understand it, and see that it hasn't done a lot of stuff that you don't want the code to do. So being a developer myself, I always read through code and watch what it does, and also be very specific on how I use the tools that I'm using for vibe coding. And then, of course, check everything. Every time you do a change, it's really, really time consuming. So having skills to help you look at the code. For instance, I can be coding in Cursor using Sonnet or even their own LLM. And then I can use Claude on the side, monitoring it and using security skills and monitoring and even do penetration testing from the outside, from another machine even, and see what happens and if it finds something that is really dangerous. And of course, make sure that you never, ever share environment variables out to GitHub. They have their own way of finding their way out there, and if you don't watch very carefully for this, you can expect a hacker to find your environment variables, which could be the secrets. For instance, using Claude, the Claude APIs, and if you are the lucky one that has your card set to just being auto-invoiced by Claude, that could be an expensive thing to do. There are numerous examples of this happening. So you need to be a little bit knowledged, and if you are not knowledged, don't be afraid to ask the LLM, are you sure this is secure? Is this app that you recently made, is this secure? And what is the security holes, and what should I be watching out for? And just don't pretend to be a pro, rather than ask the AI to help you. You can even use statements like, pretend I'm 5, what should I be looking for in my newly created code? And it will definitely help you find out what could be fixed.
Yeah, I think it's so funny because to this day, sometimes when it's wrong, and I know it's wrong, you know, I will ask it exactly that, Ronnie. Are you sure about that? And it goes, oh, I'm so sorry. I made a mistake there. And then it gives you the right answer the second time. It's so weird. Go ahead, Chris.
it, yeah. So this is one of those things where having, like, if you don't know anything, you can get AI to build you something. But like having that experience makes that process so much easier, in that, like, as I'm going through and as it's doing things, I have an idea of what it's doing. And so I can see it starting to build something, and I can stop it and say, wait a minute, this is not what we talked about. And I can kind of chime in there. And that, that comes, with experience. And I've done a lot. Most of this stuff that I'm doing, I could do. It just takes a whole lot longer. But when you have that experience, being able to catch what it's doing and catch that it's going off the rails, or catch that it's doing exactly what you told it, but maybe you didn't tell it exactly what you wanted, right? It's the same thing in the real world. Like, there was a communication gap. Like, I told it I wanted it to do this thing, and I thought I was super clear with what that thing was. But in the real world, and sometimes in Claude, you weren't as clear as you thought you were, right? And so having that experience to be able to follow what it's doing, and not necessarily looking at every single line of code, but watching as things go through the console, and being able to check out, like, oh, I see what it's doing. I know what it's doing. That makes sense. Like, oh, no, that doesn't. Let's stop here. What are you doing, right? And so, yeah.
And Ronnie.
Yeah, and I have a funny story as well. We were coding some functionality and needed some added functionality that was kind of not the part of the main chat, so I needed an extra kind of feature that I would like to open in a new chat window. So in Cursor, you have multiple windows or multiple agents that are working for you. And I was opening a new chat and was giving some basic instructions. And what I tend to do is, in this chat, we are going to do this and reference these documents and drag drop a few of the references or APIs or whatever I'm being referencing, and rules, etc. So I started this with, I would like this chat to be blah, 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 blah. And I always rename the chats. So normally when you start writing this code in the chat or in the terminal, the chat gets renamed with that specific thing. So I was writing something in the form of this chat is about blah 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 blah, and then I hit enter and went to lunch. When I come back from lunch, it had created a full-blown chat client, added it to the code, and it was operative and working. So there are funny stuff happening as well.
Yeah, it's amazing times that we live in. Let's go to the next question.
The next one's from Brody Hefner in New York City. What free resources do you find especially useful for keeping up with important AI advances? YouTube channels, Foundation Lab training, Hugging Face, others? He's got a few links to follow.
Courtney.
Yeah, the ones you mentioned are good. A good free site for aggregating tools to figure out what you want to do, or searching for specific tools, is called futuretools.io. Futuretools.io, and it's curated by Matt Wolf, and it's an entire database of over 4,000 AI tools are listed, and you can. It also has tools. You've got AI news, videos, and he maintains this on a weekly basis. And he does a weekly AI briefing, which you can subscribe to there. But it lists all these tools, and each one of these is a hot link to each particular tool. And you can choose a category. Are you looking for speech to text? Are you looking for, marketing tools, automation tools, etc.? So you can pick a category, or you can click on paid or free or freemium. And as you click on each one of these, it changes all the tools that are listed down here below. So it does a nice job of categorizing and presenting you with all the tools you'd ever want to need in the world, over 4,000 plus. Plus, Matt does weekly videos and his log, which keeps you up to date. Hugging Face is a good place to also aggregate a lot of the latest stuff, too.
and running.
Yeah, so totally agree with Courtney on Matt Wolf's site. I've been using that for a long time. And of course, there are some YouTube channels that are depending on what tools you're using. And Reddit, of course, is a big source of specific information. Let's say Claude, you go into the Claude user group in Reddit, and there's loads and loads of information and knowledge people, but also resources. So links to external resources that can be used for this. And of course, we have our own office hours, after hours community, which is available 24/7. There is more and more people and very good discussions on AI and really concrete projects, and a lot of help is being shared there. And of course, depends on how advanced you will get, but many of those that are in this after hours meeting is really knowledge about AI and are actively developing stuff in there. So go visit and be a part of the community as well.
Yeah, and for me, I second that, the community that we have here at Discord. And also, I mean, I learned so much just from watching what all of you are doing on this show, all the stuff that Chris has demoed. I mean, it's really amazing. It's hard to keep up with this stuff. I also listen to Intelligent Machines that used to be called This Week in Google. That's a really good podcast, long-running podcast, and they've kind of pivoted to talking a lot more about AI and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I stay up to date on what's going on. Let's go to the next question, Dave.
This one's from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Is anyone familiar with time-addressed access to media, which allows playout while recording in the cloud? How are you using it? Does it allow for ad insertion by pausing a sports event?
Ooh, that sounds really cool and a very high level sort of type of production that I don't do. So I don't, unless anybody raises their hand, Courtney, go ahead.
Well, EVS has been around for, decades to do this kind of thing. It makes a growing file, and it is addressed by timecode. So it keeps a running timecode, and it, addresses everything by markers that are dropped at a specific time. And I guess this TAMS is, and of course it was a proprietary format. It uses a proprietary disk operating system, et cetera, et cetera. So, and was quite expensive, and it's a command line kind of accessed media system. I haven't looked at TAMS, so it looks like it's a new standard for having these type of files that are time addressed, either from time of day or from start time to whenever, once the file was opened. Maybe it's an offset time. So it looks curious, but I have not used it. And I don't know about if it will allow ad insertion, because usually if it's a running time recording based, time is going to be continuous, and interrupting it to insert an ad, I'm not sure how it would handle that.
Next question.
The next one comes from Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas. Do you think we'll ever see a fix to the crushed blacks on ATEM, or should we pivot to switchers with better quality?
This old question again. All right, Ronnie, what do you think?
I think Blackmagic had the time to fix this if they wanted to, or if the hardware allowed them to do some firmware updates. So I don't think we will ever see a fix on that. And I think the reason is basically the hardware can't cope with that. It's the chip they are using in the output of these devices are not going to be able to do that. And there could be another political reason for this, that they don't want to have that fixed and force you to upgrade. Myself, we have multiple ATEM ISOs for the small ones, and we have a lot of constellations, 2 MEs and 1 MEs as well, and they don't have that same issue going forward. And of course, the easy fix would be to just output to something like a Ultra Studio Recorder, and then you will have a fixed signal for that. So Ultra Studio Recorder is creating the correct version of the image, which is not compressed. So that is one way to go.
So Blackmagic builds these products, the ATEM Mini line, to a price point, right? So I don't think any company would intentionally build a product that they knew was inferior. Every product, all design is about compromise, right? So you're trying to build to a certain price point. I don't think there's anything, there's nothing that will just fix this. I mean, Jeff, you should probably just give up on it, to be honest, because the chip, like Ronnie was saying, inside, that USB component, it will only send MJPEG compressed video. There's no way to fix that. That is a hardware issue. So what I've done on my ATEM Mini is I take one of the HDMI outs and I feed that into an external HDMI to USB encoder that gives me better picture quality. So I have a roll-in encoder. So they make, there's a couple of different versions of this. They have the UVC one, which is just HDMI in, USB 3 out. They also have the UVC02, which gives you more features, like it's got an actual analog to digital interface in it for microphone, and it's got buttons in there where, like, if you're doing presentations, you can switch slides and you can play, but it's got transport controls and all of that sort of stuff. If you don't need that, just go with the cheaper UVC01. That will give you full quality YU-Y2, and it is a noticeable increase in quality. Also, I'll just remind people that a while ago, I don't remember if it was a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, but Zoom did some corrections on their end to kind of compensate color profile-wise for that. That did improve the quality of any Blackmagic ATEM Mini device that's connected to a Zoom meeting. And I remember we did episodes on this where we noticed the quality difference. So thanks to Zoom for addressing something there on that end. But that was a special fix or workaround for that issue. So there's nothing in the hardware that you can do other than just, again, take the HDMI out, use a different encoder, and call it a day. Next question.
Next is from Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany. What is the best way to transfer a webcam signal over a distance of 10 to 15 meters to a Mac running Zoom if a long USB cable does not work, or what other options are there?
And Chris, go ahead.
Get a different long USB cable, specifically a fiber-based one. And, if this is something you're kind of stuck and you've got to use a USB camera, they're not cheap. I think Corning I would trust anything Corning makes. Their fiber stuff is great. They were kind of the first in this kind of ballpark. Monoprice makes some. So for, 100 feet, or you want 50, what did you say, 50? It was 15 meters. So about 50 feet of fiber optic USB A to A extension cable. You're looking at $368 from Monoprice. I don't know anything about these specific cables, but in general, that's going to be your safest bet, is to convert the USB to fiber. It's just kind of simple. It's simple. One cable, plug it in, and it should just work. It's not cheap, but
yeah. And also Mickey is echoing that in the chat, says get a fiber USB extension hub. He's got a link there. Go ahead, Ronnie.
I would buy another camera because the pricing of these fibers and the potential problems you will get into after the cable breaks, etc., are so annoying. Ask me how I know. So I would suggest you get another camera, or you can do something like, let me see if I got the same thing up here. So there are UVC to HDMI, or UVC to SDI, or even UVC to NDI converters. And I think that is a better way to do it if you are have your mindset to use webcams that is UVC compatible. Either way, I would just get another camera. Get another camera.
Courtney.
Yeah, I agree with the Ronnie there. There are solutions. HD-based T is a protocol that you can get that will extend. REI makes these that are two little boxes that go on either end. This will handle USB 3, so it'll handle higher speed, and it'll handle video up to 330 feet, so over Cat 6. So, but of course, you will have some latency in there, so bear that in mind. HD-based T is pretty low latency, so you might consider that. You have a hub. up to 330 feet away. But you have to, one problem you have with a longer cable, if you're powering a camera off that USB, a webcam at the end, is the voltage drop once you get above 30 feet or so is going to drop you down below 5 volts. And so you're going to have some problems, perhaps, if the camera, has, especially if it's a PTZ or something that's going to have motors. It may not have enough current over that long cable, so you may need a solution that has, and a lot of the fiber optic solutions have power at both ends so that you can, power. It may pull its power from one end from the computer side, but you may have to power it the other side. Since it's a fiber optic connection, it may not carry. They may not have copper in there to carry the DC power to the other end. So bear that in mind.
Yeah, and there's another suggestion in the chat here too. Ike Potter was suggesting a Zowie box, and it looks like JJ McKenna also recommends that. And I believe there's a Zowie box that supports full NDI too, so that could also be a really good solution that'd be a little bit cheaper than a fiber cable too. Plus it has other functionality. You could just connect the camera to the Zowie box and just run a long Ethernet cable. Ethernet cables are cheap, and then you've got the full quality NDI stream going into that computer, which you could absolutely feed that into Zoom. Ike Potter was saying no, it supports HX3 NDI. Well, that would probably still be better and a cheaper solution. So I guess that's the question, is how much do you want to spend? Do you want to buy a really expensive fiber cable or converter boxes or the Zowie box? So that's something you'll have to consider. Just a reminder, I'm a little bit late here before we end the show too, but if you like the show and you like what you're watching, you can support us various ways. You can become part of the community. This show is entirely driven by a wonderful community of people. We have everyone from the panelists that join the show to bring their experience to you to answer your questions, but also we have a wonderful technical crew that puts this show together every single week, and there's all sorts of roles available. So if you're thinking about putting another tool in your tool belt, expanding your knowledge in various different ways, go to officehours.global/volunteer. That's officehours.global/volunteer. And if you want to throw us a few dollars, you can also do that by going to officehours.global/donate. And there is now a link on the homepage in our navigation bar right at the top to make that easy. You can just click that donate button. Thanks. All right, let's go to the next question.
Well, speaking of Ethernet cables, John Idelson of Monterey, California, is asking what are the best Ethernet cables to place under carpets in a convention booth for NDI power over Ethernet cables.
Ronnie.
So previously we used flat cables. We've stopped using those ones. We are moved along and started to use Unify patch cables. They're just 3 millimeters outer diameter and is really, really thin. And of course, there are other options as well. Unify patch cables is available up to 8 meters. I don't know how many feet that is, but maybe some of you can translate that to un-European measurements. And they are flexible, really thin, and extremely easy to put under carpets, etc. And they don't show too much. And they're pretty rugged to be that thin as well.
And Chris.
So the opposite of what Ronnie said. Ronnie went with super thin. Like the other option is like tactical grade stuff, and it's thicker and it's more resilient, and it's more expensive. And then a kind of step in between a normal Ethernet and tactical, and this is kind of fudging it, is if you get a direct burial cable. It tends to be a little cheaper than tactical cable, but more rugged than regular cable. So another option of something to put under people's feet.
Courtney.
Yeah, I have gone with the flat. It depends on how much traffic you're going to have over this carpet, but the flat is low profile, so someone's not going to trip over it. And it depends on whether or not you're putting foam carpet padding underneath the carpet as well, where you can cut a little trough and put the run a little cable through the trough. But if you're not going to do that, then this is fairly cheap. This is a Cat 6 snagless from PPA for I think 100 feet for $17.99. That's not bad. That's what I ran up to from my downstairs to my upstairs, because I had to run up a stairwell and around the baseboards, and the flat cable was pretty easy to run. And the speed's okay, but it's not super high speed when you get to the end of that 100 feet.
Yeah, and let's go with Ronnie.
Yeah, it says 75 feet. I would probably go with ubiquity fiber. I think I will go with that.
And Leslie, for like anything important, I don't feel comfortable running wires without any kind of cable ramp to protect them. So personally, like for me, like I bought some of these. They were, I was very skeptical because I thought, well, these can't possibly be good considering how cheap they are. But I ended up buying these. They come in a 3-pack. They're about 4 feet long. They're made by Vivor, $68.99. You get 3 of these, and they snap together like Lego. And they have these big flaps that you pull these open, and they have these channels inside. And you can see you can run actually quite a bit. And I like that it's separated. So what I do is I run one side with power, and then the other side I have run all my audio and video through that. So that's something that I would probably consider. And it wouldn't be very expensive for you if you were just running 75 feet to buy a few, buy multiple packages of that and just snap them together. And that way you don't have to worry about people potentially damaging those wires over time as they put pressure by stepping over those. All right, well, that will wrap the Saturday show. Thanks to all the panelists for bringing your A game, answering all these questions. We couldn't get to all of them today. Thank you to you, the producers, because we wouldn't have a show without you if you didn't put these questions. Thanks for waking up this morning. And if we didn't get to your question, you'll find that we'll push those back. Those will show up in your notes section of your Makana account, and you can always repost those questions on another day. We'll be back tomorrow, Sunday morning. Join us for that. And if we were to travel around the world to answer all these questions according to the Talaluk traversal, it would have been 26,000 miles. That's 41,000 kilometers. And 204 million bananas for scale. And Ronnie's got a banana for scale right there. And last reminder, too, we've got meeting reminders here. There's a new volunteers meeting at 8:30 a.m. Right after this show. And then, of course, a volunteers meeting direct after that at 9. If you don't know how to find those meeting links I mentioned earlier, but you got to be part of our community. And just a reminder, you can go to officehours.global/join to stay in the loop on all that stuff. All right, that's it. We'll jump into after hours now. See ya.
Are those tactical bananas, though? That's
they're all technical.
Are they armored?
Tactical bananas are tend to be brown or black. So
carbon fiber bananas.
Mine become camouflaged after about a week and a half.
That's a tactical banana.
Yellow and brown kind of camouflage.
And it has this army voice.
So how many strands does that banana have for redundancy?
No, it's one banana. It's a single banana.
Well, it's the whole bunch.
It's a one-way
Not
banana.
a twisted pear.
Not a twisted pear.
A twisted banana.
All right, it's a good show. Thanks for showing up, everyone. Appreciate it.
Catch you next time.
Saturday.
All right.
Bye now.
Cheers.